All right, you guys, so today this is going to be a demonstration on how to create a desert scene in 1 point perspective. So you're going to need a blank sheet of paper, a eraser, a pencil, a ruler, and possibly a sharpener. If you don't have access to a ruler, you can really use anything that has a straight edge. So the binding of a book, a folded up piece of paper, a binder of some kind. So anything that will make a straight line is what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is going to be the goal for what we're going to get to by the end of this session. So this is going to be what your drawing should look like when we're done. I'm going to show you exactly how to get there. So first thing we need to do is make our horizon line. So we're going to make our line go straight across the page, horizontally. Remember, the horizon line is the made up line where the sky meets the ground. This time our horizon line can be dark. We're not going to need to erase any of it. We just need to make sure it's nice and straight across our page. And then we're also going to add a vanishing point somewhere in the middle. The vanishing point does not need to be super large. I know that when we did our practice notes that we made our vanishing point really big. We do not need to do that for this one, okay? It needs to be nice and small right there in the center. The first thing we're going to do on this drawing is the road in the middle. So this drawing is going to be like we're on the road going towards some mountains. So we're going to make a guideline that's going to go from our vanishing point down straight to the bottom of our paper. This guideline is going to help us to make the road. And remember, when we make a guideline, it needs to be super light because we're going to erase part of it later. So look at how light this is compared to the other one. I think I did that really crooked. So let me try that again. Okay, so vanishing point, ruler's nice and straight, and then a guideline. Yeah, that first one was a little crooked. Okay, so you can measure at this point if you want the sides of your road to be exact. If not, you can kind of just eyeball it. So if you're going to measure it, you can put the 2-inch mark where the guideline is, which means we're going to make a mark at the end of the ruler so that this side will be 2 inches, and a mark at 4 inches so that this side will be 2 inches. So the two sides of our road will be equal in distance from the guideline that we created. So from there, we're going to make a line that goes from our vanishing point to that line. And this time we're going to make a receding line. So that means that it's going to be nice and dark because it's going to stay there to help give perspective. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to make our ruler line up with the vanishing point and the mark that we made on the bottom of the paper. And then make a nice dark receding line. So now we've got this part's going to act as our road. And the next step would be to make these lines going down the center of the road. So again, we're going to need some more guidelines. I'm not going to measure these guidelines. I'm just going to put them where I think it will look good. So the thickness of these guidelines is going to be on the bottom here, how thick the first line in the road will be, which doesn't need to be very big. So something like that would be perfect. So that's how large our first line in the road will be. So we're going to make a guideline again. So these next two lines I'm going to make are going to be very light because they're guidelines. Just like that. So right now everybody should have one dark triangle and then two kind of really skinny light triangles. So from here, we're going to start to make those lines in the road. So remember, as things go away from us towards the vanishing point, their height will get shorter, their width will get skinnier, and the distance between each line will get smaller. So in every aspect of these lines will get smaller as it goes towards the vanishing point, okay? So this first line, let's make it about this big. Again, I'm not measuring here. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And then once I make a mark of how large I want it to be, I can use my ruler to make a nice straight horizontal line. So this section here will be my first line in my road right there. Okay, so this guy right here is my first line. So the next one, I'm going to give it some distance here. So my next one will start here. So this is all going to be a gap. And then it's going to be shorter in height. So this amount right here will need to get smaller on the next one. So maybe something like that. So that way I can use my ruler once I've marked it to make a nice straight horizontal line. And then this space right here will be my next line in the road. And so I'm going to continue that all the way towards my vanishing point. So now the next gap is going to be even smaller. And then that line also needs to be shorter in height. So maybe something like this. And then I'm going to keep going, using those guidelines to help me out. And then as you get way back here, they're going to kind of just turn into dots. It's perfect. Right? So now from here, I'm going to all the way fill in this guy. I know that the road is supposed to be black and the lines are supposed to be white, but we're going to flip that because I don't want to be here forever and a day shading in the road. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and erase my guidelines because I don't need them anymore. So those guidelines that are in between, we're going to erase. And then I'm going to put back anything that might have gotten erased a little bit. And just like that. So the next thing we're going to do on our drawing is going to be the mountains. So I'm going to start with the mountains that are going to go off to the right. Remember, we live in California, so we don't have big, tall, gigantic mountains. And we also do not have mountains that look like this, right? When people first start to draw, they like to draw mountains that look like big, giant triangles with like the snow peak on top, right? I'm sure all of you at one point in your life have drawn mountains like this. That's not what mountains look like, especially in California. So we're going to be drawing some rolling hills. So we're going to go from our vanishing point and make a nice kind of squiggly line that kind of resembles some mountains. Perfect. We're going to do 3 layers of mountains. So we'll do the second layer of mountain the same way, where it's going to come from the vanishing point, but maybe we'll have it kind of like dip behind that first layer a little bit to give it some more depth. Something kind of like that. And then we'll do 1 more layer of mountains here. Remember I said we were going to do 3. So it looks something kind of like that. So in order to make these mountains a little bit more believable, we're going to do some shading. So this is something called atmospheric perspective, where the things that are closer to you are going to be darker, and as they move away from you, they will get lighter, okay? So that's because the particles and molecules, everything that's in the air, everything that's in the atmosphere is going to block your view from seeing details on things that are further away. So because this mountain is closer, we're going to see a lot of the details on it, it's going to be darker. I'm not going to shade the entire mountain right now because you guys will have time to do that independently. I'm just going to shade part of it so that you get the idea. Okay, so we've got this guy is going to be the darkest one, and the next one is going to be like our medium value. So this one's like a 4 or a 5 on our value scale, and this one's like a 3 or a 4, somewhere in the middle. And then the last row is going to be like a 1 or a 2, as long as it's lighter than the middle row. Okay, something like that, right? So again, I'm not going to shade all of the mountains because you guys will have time to do that on your own. But I am going to draw the other side because it's going to be like we're driving into a canyon. So I am going to do the mountains that go on this side. Just doing it the same way I did the first set, making sure that they go down into the vanishing point, looking something kind of like that. Okay, so the next step in this lovely drawing is going to be our telephone poles. So when we do our telephone poles, we're going to need some guidelines. So I'm going to use my ruler again. I'm going to go from the vanishing point to the top left corner. Make a nice light guideline. Remember, we're going to erase that later, so it needs to be very light. And then the line that's going to go down towards the bottom of our paper, we're going to do that one. It's not going to go into the corner. It's going to go a little bit away from the corner, like right here. Okay, so I'm going to start at the vanishing point and then make another guideline. So again, remember, these are going to get erased later, so they need to be nice and light. And then we're going to use those guidelines to create our telephone poles. So this is where our parallel lines are going to be very important. So we do not want to make our telephone poles crooked, like diagonal like this, because then it'll look like they're falling over. We want to make sure our telephone poles are nice and straight. So I'm going to go from where this guideline stops, and that's going to be where I'm going to make my first telephone pole nice and straight vertically. So that'll be the first line for our first telephone pole, right? So remember, just like these lines here, our telephone poles are not only going to get shorter in height, and that's where the guidelines help us, but they're also going to get smaller in width, right? So this first telephone pole needs to be the biggest one, and then as they move back, they need to get smaller in width. So again, I'm going to make this first one the largest one. That doesn't mean it's going to be huge. It's just going to be the largest one. So something like that would be perfect. Again, I didn't measure that. I just kind of eyeballed it. So now I'm going to do the same thing that I did with my lines in the road with my telephone poles. So I'm going to make the next telephone pole go down a little ways. So I'm going to leave a big gap here. So the next line for my telephone pole will be over here. Again, make sure your lines that are vertical go parallel to one another. So they should not be diagonal. They should be nice, straight vertical lines. And then this telephone pole width needs to get a little bit smaller than this one. So again, I'm just going to use my ruler and eyeball it. Make it just a little bit smaller. Not by a lot, but a little bit. So something like that would be perfect. I'm going to continue that all the way to my vanishing point. So again, the distance between the telephone poles is going to get shorter. So this distance here is shorter than this distance here. Nice straight vertical parallel lines. And then this telephone pole is going to get smaller in width. I'm going to continue doing that all the way down. So eventually your telephone poles are going to end up just being singular lines because they'll be so tiny and far away from us. And then remember our atmospheric perspective. So they're going to probably also get lighter as they go away from us too. Okay, so now that we have the poles that go up and down, we also need the cross beams. So we also need these guys here. Okay, so when we do those, again, we're going to use our ruler and we're going to make them the same width as the part that goes up and down. So what you can also do is use the guideline to help you figure out where you should stop the crossbeam. So you see how I'm making this like triangle here with my ruler? I'm going to go from this guideline and try to match that distance on the other side. And then make that crossbeam the same thickness about as the rest of it. Okay, from here, because we want to trick people into thinking this is a pole and not just some lines that we drew, we're going to make the edges rounded. Also make the edges rounded on the top. So we'll end up erasing this bit right here. Okay, so we'll repeat that step all the way down. So use the guideline to figure out where you should stop the crossbeam. Make it the same thickness. And then make it rounded on the edges. And then as they get further away, they're going to have less and less detail. So if it's a little bit funky down here, don't worry about it. Okay, so now our poles need, first of all, we need to erase our guideline because we won't need that anymore. So you're going to erase that extra little bit on top of your pole that you don't need, as well as the guideline. And if you erase part of your mountain, don't worry about it, you can put it back. Okay, so now we need the part of the telephone pole that actually gives information to people, right? So the wires. Before we do the wires, we need to add some extra little bits on top of the cross beams. Because remember, the wood is not what's sending the information on the wire or allowing the electricity to go through. There's a little metal part on top of the wood that the wire connects to. So you need to do these little kind of pill-shaped half circles. that we're going to connect our wires to. And again, those should get smaller as they go back as well. And now we can do the wire. So from here, we're going to go and connect each side of the cross beams together with a half circle. So these two left sides, I'm just going to draw a little half circle. These two right sides, I'm going to draw a little half circle. And I'm going to continue doing that all the way down. And then a really important part to this is that you also need to do a little half circle going this way to give the suggestion that there's another pole somewhere over here. And then our poles are going to be shaded in kind of dark. So these poles that are in the back, remember atmospheric perspective, they can be kind of gray. And then as they come towards us, it can get a little bit darker. Again, this is going to be something where I'm not going to shade in all of them because you can do that independently. So it'd be something kind of like that. Okay, and then at this point, we can also erase this guideline that's on the floor. Won't need that one anymore either. And then I'm going to put back anything that I might have accidentally erased. And then last but not least, what we're going to do before we work on this another time, next time I see you, will be the shadows. So if we're looking at this example, we're going to do these shadows going across our road. So we're going to need to make another guideline. So we'll make a line on this side over here. Let's just say right there sounds good. And then we're going to use our ruler to go from the vanishing point to that mark that we made, make a nice light guideline. And then we're going to start making some shadows. So if we're looking at my example, take a note of where the sun is, where the light would be coming from, right? So for example, because the shadows are going this direction, the sun is over here. The sun's over here, making light come from this direction. So when I give you time to add your own details, for the love of God, please don't put your sun here. Everybody always wants to put a sun here. That's not where the light's coming from, based off of the shadows that we're all going to put on our page right now. Okay, so I'm going to move this guy out of the way. We need to make some guidelines. So, or sorry, these lines are going to stay. They're going to be horizontal. They're going to be parallel to one another, nice and straight. So I'm going to make a line that goes from the bottom of my telephone pole towards the guideline on the other side. I'm not going to make the bottom part of this shadow because it looks like it goes off of the edge of the page here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we also need to think, what kind of shadow would the crossbeam make? So again, if our sun is over here going that direction, the crossbeam, the part that makes the cross, is not facing the sun. So we're not going to have a giant cross on the ground. Instead, we're just going to have a little extra rectangle here that's the same thickness as this part of the shadow to give that illusion that there's some extra bit there, right? And then again, when we shade shadows, we don't want to make it super, super dark because shadows, you can still see what's underneath them. So I still want to be able to see the road. I still want to be able to tell what's going on underneath the shadow. So maybe we'll make it like a 3 or a 4 on our value scale at most. Something like this would be perfect. Okay, so I've just got a little extra rectangle here to show that there's a cross beam, and then this is the long part of our shadow. So we're going to do the same thing for all of the rest of our shadows. We're going to make them the same width as the pole. So we're going to go from the bottom of the pole and make a line that goes to the guideline on the top and the bottom. And then we're going to make that extra little rectangle, and then we're going to fill it in. Remember, don't make it super, super dark because it is a shadow and we should be able to see things that are underneath it. And I'm going to continue all the way down. Straight horizontal lines, matching the width of the pole. Give it a little extra rectangle and fill it in. So definitely perspective drawings can be a little bit tedious, but I think they're also really rewarding. Okay, and then that's it for this part of this instruction. So if your drawing looks like mine, then you're ready to go for when I see you next time and we add even more details to our desert scene. So thanks for doing what you do, and I will see you next time.